Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Hey, everyone.
Today, we're jumping into, well, a bit of everything, really. Global market jitters, some pretty high stakes trade talks,
Hmm.
a couple of big corporate dramas, and it's all happening against this backdrop of some, let's say, intense political
Right.
currents. We've got stacks of sources, market reports, news analysis, even some internal memos we've looked at. Our job, break it down for you.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, I think, is how these stories, which seem separate on the surface, they're actually deeply connected. It's this complex web of economic forces, policy choices, even how the public feels about things. We're going to try and unpack not just what's happening, but maybe more importantly, why it matters.
Exactly. Give you that broader
So you
context.
walk away really understanding the implications.
Okay, let's dive in. Global markets first. Our sources are showing.
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it?
It really is. U.S. stock futures were pulling back a bit. European stocks slipped too. But interestingly, the euro seemed almost unfazed by the latest tariff threats. What's the story there?
Yeah, that's a key point. If you look bigger picture, the euro dipping only slightly, despite Trump talking about a 30% tariff next month. It kind of suggests investors are maybe getting a bit used to this rhetoric.
Like, heard it before.
Sort of, after all the past U-turns and delays, maybe there's some fatigue. But the bond market, that's telling a very different story.
Okay. How so?
Well, long-dated government bonds, the really long-term ones, they're definitely blocking. German benchmark yields hit their highest since April 1st.
Wow.
And 30-year yields, highest since October last year. So why the split? Why are bonds nervous when the euro's kind of shrugging?
Oh, right.
Our sources point to, well, obviously fears of a trade war causing inflation, maybe even stagflation. It's
Yeah.
inflation plus economic stagnation. But crucially, it's also about the Trump administration's attacks on Fed Chair Powell.
Ah, the Fed independence angle.
Just exactly. Worries about Fed independence seem to be really weighing on the long end of the bond market.
Yeah.
It's like investors are looking past the immediate tariff noise and focusing more on long-term inflation risk and, whether the Fed can fight it effectively. That's a pretty significant shift, I think.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. While all that's happening in traditional markets, tariffs, central bank drama, we're seeing precious metals pop, silver's hitting highs not seen in almost 14 years, gold's near a record.
Hmm.
And get this, Bitcoin just surged past $120,000, first time ever. What is driving this crypto rally? Is it related?
Well, it certainly raises the question, doesn't it? This surge, particularly with all the institutional money flowing into the new spot, Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, it strongly suggests investors are seeing Bitcoin differently now.
How so?
Maybe not just as, a purely speculative gamble, but potentially as a macro hedge, a store of value, especially because it's structurally scarce. It feels like a fundamental shift in perception is happening.
So, for you listening, when bonds are signaling caution like this, but digital assets are surging, how do you read those conflicting signals? What does it tell you about market confidence, about future inflation? Something to definitely keep an eye on for your own outlook.
Absolutely.
All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk about the core of that market uncertainty. President Trump's tariff push.
Yeah, this is heating up.
Sources are confirming the plan. 30% tariffs on goods from the EU and Mexico, 35% on Canada, and the deadline is August 1st. That feels like a pretty serious escalation.
It is. And what's fascinating, really, is the global scramble it's set off. Everyone's trying to cut a deal before that deadline.
Like who?
Well, the EU is making it a top priority. Their trade commissioner, Sefcovic, basically warned a 30% tariff would, and I quote, practically eliminate trade.
Oof.
Yeah. And they're not just talking. They've apparently prepared $21 billion in counter tariffs. Retaliation, basically.
Okay. Anyone else?
Oh, yeah. South Korea is pushing hard for what they're calling an in-principle deal. They're even hinting they might give the U.S. more access to their agricultural markets to avoid a 25% tariff.
Concessions already.
Right. Vietnam's trying to get a lower rate than the 20% they were threatened with. India's working on an interim deal below 20%. Even Thailand's thinking about letting more U.S. goods in duty-free.
Wow.
The key takeaway here is the intense, immediate pressure this puts on global trade. Countries are being forced to either make pretty big concessions or face some potentially severe economic pain. You're listening to Theta Fuse, by the way, digging into the market drivers.
And it's crucial to remember, this isn't just like abstract policy stuff happening far away. It hits home. We're
Definitely.
seeing reports. Germany's huge export industry is sounding the alarm. And there's this story about a clock company in Michigan, nearly 100 years old,
Oh, I saw that.
closing down specifically because tariffs made their parts too expensive.
Yeah, really tough.
Even your morning coffee. There's talk of 50% tariffs on Brazilian coffee potentially pushing prices up.
So, yeah, the question for you is, as countries rush to make these deals or prepare counter moves, how could these rapid shifts in trade policy ripple through global supply chains? And, more importantly, how might that affect your everyday costs in the next few months? It connects directly back to your wallet.
For sure. Okay, let's pivot to a couple of big corporate stories. Very different challenges here. First up, Boeing.
Right. My neck of the woods, aerospace.
Yeah.
Following that tragic Air India crash, South Korea is getting ready to order its airlines flying Boeing jets.
Yeah.
They want them to examine the fuel switches.
Okay, and the context here is important, right? There was
Yeah.
an FAA advisory back in 2018 suggesting these checks.
Exactly. Recommended them, but crucially didn't mandate them.
Mm-mm.
And the preliminary report on the Air India crash noted the airline hadn't actually done those checks. So if we step back, this really kicks off a critical discussion, regulations versus recommendations.
Yeah.
That's the line. South Korea is taking action. But other sources suggest Boeing and the FAA, maybe more privately, sent out notices saying the fuel switch locks are safe, checks aren't required.
So conflicting messages.
Seems like it. And it creates this tension, right? How much leeway do airlines have? Where does the buck stop with regulators and manufacturers? The insight here, I think, is that these different interpretations, advisory versus mandatory, can seriously impact global aviation safety and, just as importantly, public trust in the whole sector. Maybe something to watch in terms of implied volatility on Boeing stock, especially those shorter-term options.
Good point. Okay, now let's talk Tesla. Sources are showing this growing group of shareholders really pushing for a full-time CEO.
Yeah, that story's gaining traction.
Elon Musk's attention just seems pulled in so many directions, doesn't it? Starting a third political party, trying to fix X or whatever else. Meanwhile, Tesla itself is dealing with plunging profits.
Right.
Its biggest sales drop ever, and his political stuff is arguably hurting the brand. Plus, some key EV tax credits are disappearing for buyers. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And it really brings up fundamental questions about corporate governance, doesn't it? And leadership focus. You've got analysts like Dan Ives, who's usually pretty bullish, calling for the board to basically set ground rules for Musk going forward.
Like what kind of rules?
Well, things like maybe an oversight committee specifically for his political activities, clear rules about how much time he actually has to commit to Tesla.
And Musk's response?
Publicly. Shut up, Dan.
Okay.
So, yeah, it sets up this really unprecedented sort of loyalty test, you could say, between this incredibly charismatic, almost cult-like CEO and the actual performance of the company he leads. It puts immense pressure on the board to navigate that.
So thinking about both Boeing and Tesla, very different situations, right? One about safety protocols, the other about leadership focus and governance. What do these challenges tell you, the listener, about the potential hidden risks, the pressures inside these huge companies you might invest in or maybe just rely on every day? It's a peek behind the curtain.
Definitely worth thinking about.
Okay, moving to our final story. It's politically charged, and it's definitely making waves. The Jeffrey Epstein fallout.
Ah, yes. This one's complex.
Our sources show the Justice Department and the FBI put out a memo, their conclusion. No evidence of that alleged list of powerful men connected to Epstein. And they reaffirmed he died by suicide, not murder.
Right.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This directly contradicts some pretty persistent conspiracy theories pushed by President Trump himself and some of his key allies.
Yeah, and what's really compelling, politically speaking, is the loyalty test this seems to have created, particularly within Trump's base, the Magier world.
Yes, so.
Well, the memo didn't deliver the smoking gun some were expecting or hoping for, and they're not happy about it. Reports of infighting, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino apparently considering quitting over it. Attorney General Pamela Bondi seems to be taking a lot of the heat.
And Trump's defending her.
Very publicly. He put out a statement saying, what's going on with my boys, and in some cases gals, they're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's doing a fantastic job. So he's standing by her, but it highlights this challenge of managing the narrative even within your own core support group.
And we're seeing conservative commentators openly expressing disbelief, right? Mitch and Kelly calling Bondi the villain. Brandon Tatum saying, quote, "I don't think they're telling us the truth about Epstein."
Yeah.
Even Laura Ingraham apparently polled a crowd at a summit, asked if they were satisfied with the investigation, got overwhelmingly booed, and Trump himself, maybe trying to shift focus, just said Epstein is somebody that nobody cares about.
If you zoom out from the specifics,
Yeah.
the whole episode really shines a light on these deep political divisions we have. And just how incredibly hard it is to manage narratives today in this kind of information environment, even for a powerful administration trying to control its own message. The core implication, perhaps, is how these strongly held beliefs, this public frustration, how that can really shape the political landscape.
Yeah.
And maybe, indirectly, it could even ripple into market sentiment or how policies get implemented down the line. You're still with Theta Fuse News, making sense of the noise.
So a final question for you, our listener, on this one. How do you navigate this? How do you assess information when official reports clash so strongly with beliefs held by significant parts of the public, sometimes even echoed by political leaders? It's a critical skill to develop in today's world, isn't it?
Absolutely vital.
Wow. Okay, we covered a lot of ground today. From those mixed signals in the global markets, the looming threat of trade wars, those critical corporate challenges at Boeing and Tesla, and then this surprising political fallout from the Epstein story. It's really clear how interconnected everything is.
It really is.
Understanding those threads, seeing those connections, it genuinely gives you an edge, I think.
No doubt. We saw how investor feelings can get swayed by things like perceived Fed independence, how global trade deals can actually impact local businesses and the price you pay for coffee, and how things like leadership, governance, public trust. Those are constant battles for huge companies and political figures alike.
Our whole goal here in this deep dive, really, was to give you the insights to connect those dots for yourself, to start seeing those hidden patterns.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. In this age of constant news, shifting stories, how can a deeper grasp of these underlying connections actually help you? Help you make smarter decisions, maybe for your investments, maybe your career, or maybe just for understanding the world swirling around you.
Keep digging, keep asking questions.
And stay curious. Thanks for tuning in to Theta Fuse.
If you found this useful, hit follow and subscribe to Theta Fuse for your daily shot of market momentum.